Okay, hello everybody. Thank you for joining today's event. I'm Jason Gumpert from MSDynamicsWorld.com, and we're here for a session all about cloud assessment and which cloud is right for you with Dynamics ERP and 365. Our presenter today is Russ Riley from Concerto Cloud Services. It's great to have him with us for the first time as a presenter. As we get started, I just want to remind everyone you can ask questions at any point throughout today's event. I know Russ will be leaving time at the end. Just look for the Q&A block. You should see to the right of the main presentation area, and again, just enter those at any point. So without any further delay, I am going to hand things off to Russ to get us started. So Russ, welcome.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone out there, for taking the time to spend a little bit of your time with us today to talk about, quite frankly, ERP in the cloud and things that you should consider or be aware of. Quite frankly, we could have replaced ERP with any line of business application that you may be considering moving to the cloud. For today's agenda, we're going to discuss, again, things to consider for ERP in the cloud, contractual considerations, options with Dynamics 365, a little bit about the firm that I'm involved with, Concerto Cloud Services, and then as Jason said, we will leave some time at the end for any questions that you all may have out there. So without further ado, we'll get on going here. For areas of assessment, and again, having the pleasure of working in the cloud space since 1992, it has changed quite a bit from service bureaus to application service providers to software as a service to generic terms of cloud. So that being said, to me, there are some key areas when you're looking at a cloud-based solution or even moving things that may be on-premise to a cloud provider. There are some key components that you need to be asking questions about. Number one is integration, security compliance, technical, which we'll get to that obviously. And then lastly, a couple of contractual things that I feel that buyers of cloud services need to be, just basically be aware of and ask certain questions when you're looking into getting into, some type of relationship with a cloud provider. So when we talk about integrations, when you're looking at ERP in the cloud, one of the things that I find often is that whether it's a net new install or moving an existing ERP system to the cloud, is it integrated to other systems? i.e., they could be on-premise systems. If you are in manufacturing and distribution, you may have a warehouse management system that for whatever reason is going to stay on-premise. Can the ERP cloud-based solution integrate to your warehouse management system? How does that work? Will the cloud provider allow certain type of integrations? A couple of examples there to pay attention that some cloud providers provide and others don't relative to allowing integration to occur are what we call one-way or two-way trust that can be done through a dedicated VPN solution or even leveraging Active Directory Federation Services or ADFS. What capabilities as a consumer, when you're looking at ERP from an integration perspective, what can the cloud provider provide you and help you to ensure that you can actually integrate, again, whether it's on-premise or if it's to another cloud service provider. I give a great example. A lot of payroll, by example, now, and has been for years, is a cloud-based solution. Do you truly need to integrate from your cloud ERP platform to your payroll provider? How does that look? How can the two cloud providers interact so that you can actually transact data back and forth between each of those systems? And as the last bullet said, and really what I'm speaking on relative to multiple cloud platforms, today, so many customers that we work with, you have ERP on one cloud, you have payroll, as I mentioned, on another cloud, you may have Office 365, so you have to look at how multiple clouds, how can they connect? Again, what integration capability in this discussion point around your ERP platform provider, what can they provide you? How are they going to assist you to ensure that you can, again, whether it's on-premise or back to other multiple cloud solutions that you may be using today? This is one, compliance and security. I know lots of folks talk about this, but it's kind of interesting. A lot of folks that I work with, they tend to find out kind of after the fact, if you will, because they've had a legacy system. They're now looking at a cloud-based solution, and some of the history's been lost over time, so to speak. And I'll give a real-world example here around PCI for the credit card compliance piece. Recently had a customer who was looking to move their ERP platform to the cloud. In this case, it was Dynamics NAV. In looking at their process, they realized, number one, they indeed needed PCI compliance. Number two, we worked with them to identify the processes, their business processes, that indeed were keeping them in what I call PCI scope. At the end of the day, we were able to help the customer recognize two processes that didn't have a major economic impact and really didn't warrant an additional expense by the cloud provider relative to PCI. So again, when we talk about, do you have any compliance requirements, and we have a couple of examples listed here, ensure that the cloud provider, if you have them, can actually assist and meet those requirements. And I will tell you, I know we're going to get to the contracts discussions later in this presentation, but one of the little kind of gotchas, I call it, that I'm calling out here on compliance, is many cloud contracts will say they adhere to the requirements of PCI, ITAR, HIPAA, but when you ask for, can you present a recent audit from your auditors, you will typically hear a very quiet answer. So make sure that it's not a cloud provider saying that they adhere to these standards, but that they can actually present you as a customer or consumer an actual audited statement from a third-party audit firm. And again, obviously looking at how you manage compliance reporting today, if it's applicable to you, does that change when you go to a cloud-based ERP solution? Again, how can the cloud provider help you with reporting if indeed you have outside auditors, whether you're public, private, or healthcare related, doesn't matter. You still have certain requirements. Again, how can the cloud provider help you? And then last bullet is looking at, do you have any additional encryption logging vulnerability tests that are required by your business? And if you do, can the actual cloud provider, can they deliver that to you? Again, just a quick real-world example, dealing with one of the world's largest automobile manufacturers recently. They have very stringent requirements internally around personal information. And so in their particular situation, they required, from a cloud provider, to have additional encryption, not only at the database layer, but also at the file layer. So again, making sure when you're looking at ERP in the cloud, make sure you understand not only your compliance, but the physical operational pieces of that compliance to ensure that your cloud-based ERP solution can, again, meet your needs relative to your business. From a technical perspective, these are pretty high level, but internet connectivity, I know everybody says, well, I know what internet connectivity I have. Well, ensure that the cloud-based ERP provider that you're looking at, what requirements do they have for your connectivity to them? It is very typical that an ERP-based cloud solution, whether it's in terms and conditions or somewhere along the line, they should, or you should be asking, what type of minimum connectivity do I need to have so that I have a successful end user experience around my ERP platform in the cloud? The last bullet is one that I unfortunately see all too often. Please make sure when you're looking at ERP options in the cloud that you ask the provider, are there any situations that could create overage billing based upon my consumption or use of my cloud-based solution? In other words, is there any type of meter around internet usage that would cause you to get an additional line item bill? Just as again, a kind of a quick real life story, we were working with a customer who in this case was on a public cloud that I won't name right now, but one of the big public cloud providers, where the consumer started probably around a $30,000 a month spend, if you will, but based upon the fact that they weren't monitoring their own internal internet use and some other things, their bill within about, I think it was about 2.5 months, quickly grew to about $90,000 a month. So luckily they were able to work with a partner that helped them evaluate how they were buying, how their agreement was structured to get that spend back down and manageable. So again, make sure whether it's internet-based overages or database usage, things of that nature, make sure that you're asking those questions from the ERP cloud provider to ensure you know exactly the economics that could trigger an event of an additional line item on your monthly bill. So this is from a, continuing the technical perspective. Does the ERP provider have any technical requirements? Make sure that is absolutely spelled out black and white, and I would argue even inserted into any type of contract or service level agreement. Some very basic examples are some ERP cloud providers will require that you have a certain level of Office on the desktop, that the desktop may have to require a certain operating system level and patch level. Are there firewall permissions that they're going to ask you as a consumer of their product that you have to change on your side? What are those? Are those changes that they may require, are those okay with you and your business? You need to understand what those are. Is there any type of security access required from the cloud provider into your network or your wide area or local area network at all? Again, I already mentioned the desktop requirements. But again, these are some very basic questions that I feel that every customer, and again, I said this earlier at the beginning, whether it's ERP or quite frankly any line of business application that you may be looking to place in the cloud. On to the contractual items, some things that I want to point out when you're looking at, it could be called a cloud contract, it could be called a service level agreement. At the end of the day, it is a binding agreement between you and a service provider around your ERP. One of the things that we commonly see is what we call a stacked SLA. And so a stacked SLA, simply stated, is where a cloud provider will break apart certain pieces of their delivery to you. It could be internet usage, it could be storage usage, it could be CPU usage on a server. Basically what that means is that they could be out each of those items I just mentioned within a month, but they could still be within their overall SLA. So a non-stacked SLA will look at the platform as a whole and not separate anything in their calculations, which leads to the next bullet. Understanding if somebody tells you in their service level agreement, for example, that they provide 99.99% uptime. How is that calculated? What things are excluded from that calculation? For example, a very common thing to be excluded from a calculation like that is if there is any required maintenance windows. Most cloud providers will exclude that maintenance window from the guarantee of uptime. So again, making sure that you understand the calculation and have them articulate that, quite frankly, from my perspective, in their actual service level agreement with you. I feel that a cloud provider should be able to A, articulate it, and B, back it up in writing an agreement with you. Another piece I think we're all very sensitive to these days is understanding the language in a contract around the data. How does the language read? What rights does that provider have to your data, if any? And hopefully the answer is not at all. It should be your data, but ensure that you have language around it, which kind of ties actually to the last bullet. I apologize, I probably should have put these in a better order, but one of the things that we find often is looking at indemnification language around your data. Are they indemnifying security breaches? What type of things is the cloud provider trying to indemnify themselves against as far as providing that ERP service in the cloud to you? Lastly, even though it's not my last bullet here, termination for convenience. Some cloud providers will provide this in their agreement, others don't. I feel that you should and hopefully be able to find some type of language in an agreement that for whatever reason, a change in the business, not because you're unhappy with the service, maybe your business is acquired, or maybe you're acquiring another company that has a different ERP platform, you should have some ability, again, not for performance reasons, but just because the changing of the business, something's occurred, that you should have an ability to opt out of your agreement. Tying to that, I think we all know this because most folks are all pretty savvy buyers these days, but kind of in line with termination for convenience is looking for term and language around term. and specifically on renewal language. Do they have an auto renewal for a 1-year, 3-year term? What is that? Make sure you understand it. Are there notice provisions? Understanding if there are notice provisions, what requirement is upon you. Last thing, and my marketing person is probably going to get mad at me because I should have put it here in this deck, so I apologize to the audience, but looking at your exit strategy if you need to. Within the language of the agreement, if you do for cause, i.e. performance, or termination for convenience, how is data provided to you? What rights do you have around that data? So again, I look at it from an inception of an agreement to worst case, hopefully it never occurs for you, but if you have to leave the agreement, how can you do it by notice? And lastly, most importantly, what rights do you have to your data and how will the data be presented to you in case you do need to make a move? All right, let's talk quickly about Dynamics 365, a wonderful new player in the ERP space in the cloud. However, there is obviously a lot of different ways to buy Dynamics 365. So quickly, with Microsoft, you can have a direct relationship and buy directly from Microsoft through typically some type of enterprise agreement where you can get some pretty good terms. In particular, if you're looking, for example, at Azure as a solution for different things within your organization, you can bundle those things together, Dynamics 365, Azure, et cetera, and it's pretty attractive. There's also another channel for consumers of Dynamics 365, which is through a Microsoft certified, cloud service provider, or CSP. So that is an option where you can go directly to a Microsoft CSP, I apologize, and purchase your Dynamics 365 licenses. Alternatively, you can go through a VAR, value-added reseller, who is authorized by a Microsoft CSP to actually get those licenses as well. So by example, there may be a partner who you've worked with for years on your ERP solution. You're looking to make a move to Dynamics 365. You'd like to stay with that VAR for the consulting piece of rolling out your new ERP, but they're not an authorized Microsoft CSP. They may have a relationship with a Microsoft CSP. So make sure if you are going down that path, ask your VAR if A, they're a CSP, or B, do they have a relationship with a Microsoft CSP? And I'm sure that was clear as mud. I apologize. Hopefully it was somewhat clear. I'm going to bring all these up. So Dynamics 365 cloud options today, obviously the first and foremost, Dynamics 365 has been released on the Azure backbone, if you will. So that is the standard. A recent announcement, maybe 3-4 weeks ago, Microsoft has announced an on-premise version of Dynamics 365. If I recall correctly, pricing in more detail, I think it was in July of this year, 2017. More information, pricing, et cetera, will be released around that on-premise version. Now, that on-premise can be obviously technically on a customer's network, or it can be on a customer's partner cloud provider network. So these are all things that are going to be coming out, and we're all pretty excited about that. And then lastly, the one in the middle, and we talked about this a little bit, but it's the hybrid notion that regardless of where Dynamics 365 may reside, whether it's on the native platform of Azure today or on a customer's on-premise network, again, looking at Dynamics 365 from what I'm calling a hybrid perspective to other systems. Again, whether it's cloud to cloud or some legacy systems, WMS being a warehouse management system, by example, that for whatever reason may not be being moved to a cloud platform. So with the cloud service provider, there are some requirements by Microsoft for a cloud service provider to achieve the status of cloud service provider that provider must do. And these are the bullets right here. The one that I'm going to point out in particular, and actually we'll get to in a second, I apologize, but it's important, is understanding The cloud service provider is to help you there to some extent from an architectural perspective. Understanding if you have multi-cloud environments, how is Dynamics 365 going to integrate? What type of integration points are required, whether it's APIs, et cetera? What do those look like? How does it work? Helping for billing and subscription support, provisioning, deploying help and software configuration. Some of you on this call may be familiar with LCS, which is part of the Dynamics 365 deployment, but having a partner in a cloud service provider to actually help you go and deploy through LCS is an important piece of the solution that a cloud service provider provides. And then obviously the third bullet, helping customers with connectivity issues, client desktop issues, potential misconfigured settings within Dynamics 365, et cetera. And then managing updates for services and software. The last one here is key to me, that the CSP is providing to customers out there. As we're aware, there are third-party solutions, and there is an app store with Dynamics 365. However, some of the third-party solutions that work with Microsoft Dynamics 365 have not made their way yet to the app store. And so understanding if that third-party solution, does it require any separate platform needs other than Dynamics 365. So for example, you may have a third-party product that needs a separate SQL database. Well, if it needs a separate SQL database, where is it going to live? Is it going to reside on Azure? Is it going to reside on a private cloud provider? Where is it going to do? So the cloud service provider's role there is to help you, the consumer, understand if there are third-party products, do they have any dependencies, where is it going to live, and then how's it going to be managed? So I always like this slide, the train, the four guys trying to catch it. So I think most of us probably would agree to some extent that even if you're not on too many cloud-based solutions today, it probably will just be a question of when you will have multiple applications in the cloud. So today obviously was a high-level look at some of the things I think you should be looking at as you're surveying the cloud scene out there and understanding your options once you decide to make that move. Real quick here, and then we can get to Q&A. I want to just talk a little bit about my firm, Concerto Cloud Services. We are a private cloud provider. What that means is that every instance that we spin up in our cloud is dedicated solely to each and every customer. As you can see, we've been very fortunate to receive quite a few awards, in particular as of late. Very proud of our operation team. We are a 24/7 by 365 shop, doing true shift work with customers with global footprints. Specific to ERP, Dynamics ERP, as a matter of fact, have single customers with in excess of 2,000 plus users of Dynamics ERP on our cloud. So we're very, very happy with our relationship with Microsoft and being able to deploy what I'll call traditional Dynamics ERP for many, many years. And as you can see, and I kind of alluded to it earlier in my discussion points, but very proud of our operations team achieving a 99.99% uptime. To give you kind of what that means in real world terms, in 2016, our unscheduled downtime was just a little over 9 minutes. So as I tell our operations team all the time, fantastic job. You can see over on the far right there some of the application compliances that we have achieved. And then obviously the bottom right, you can see our strategic partnerships led by Microsoft. We're also very proud to have achieved with Cisco, a powered by Cisco, involved about a 3-month audit where we are a Cisco powered cloud. So again, very proud of that as well. A couple of last little bullets here. One of the things that I just keep saying the word proud of our team. Concerto was actually built from a little bit different vantage point from an application first perspective, which again leads to our uptime and client satisfaction and things of that nature. So also very excited to have had for many years now, for those of you who are familiar with Dynamic Communities, who runs the different user groups for Dynamics and has for years. Their ERP and sandboxes, et cetera, all reside on Concerto. leveraging our platform for their actual own day-to-day operations. So again, very happy with that. And as we were talking about Microsoft CSPs, Concerto is a Tier 1 CSP with Microsoft providing support, obviously around Dynamics 365 as well as Azure and other various flavors of Microsoft online tools, if you will. So that being said, I am at my Q&A, looking at my clock, Jason. I'm hoping I'm keeping folks on track, and I'll turn it to you for any questions right now.
Great, thanks, Russ. And yeah, anyone in the audience who has a question, this would be a great time to enter it into the Q&A, and we will get to as many as you have here. So let me turn to the list and see what has come in. Okay, first question. What would you recommend as a best first step for an organization that is mostly on-premise today?
So I think that's a great question. One of the more common adoption rates right now is around Office 365. Being a former network guy myself, one of the things I really didn't like to manage a whole lot, for example, was an Exchange server. It can take a little bit of effort. When mail goes down, no one's happy. So looking at Office 365, even if just looking at hosted Exchange, which is part of the Office 365 platform, I think that's a very good way to start embracing the cloud, understanding the cloud, and by the way, it's a fantastic price point as well.
Great. We do have a couple more questions coming in. I'm also just going to open up a very brief poll question now, just for folks in the audience. It's just an optional question to get your input, see what you thought of today's event, and give the Concerto team just an idea. And Russ, you might just want to close that on your own screen since we're seeing a gray box there. But here's a question. So we have CRM 2013 on-premise, and we want to move to Dynamics 365. Is this possible?
So it is possible. Off the top of my head, I would have to go back and see what, when you say CRM 2013, what level you're at, because there are certain paths. But certainly it's absolutely possible to move to Dynamics 365 from that version. Obviously, you'll need to engage with a partner because there will be data conversion / migration, but it is absolutely something that can be done today.
All right. Another question is asking how Concerto would compare with something like AWS, Amazon.
Well, thanks for the loaded question out there. No, that's a great question. So when you're looking at public clouds, and I think some of you may have seen some of the recent downtime announcements by the various public cloud providers out there. So number one, I would say uptime. Number two, a private cloud provider in Concerto, we do what we call platform as a service, which is true end-to-end management of the platform. So when you're looking at an AWS solution, which again, we are a managed service provider for AWS and Azure. So let me be very clear. When we say you want to run it in AWS, I always ask the question, who's going to manage that AWS environment for you? Someone still needs to manage it, maintain it, patch it, et cetera. So with Concerto, we are providing end-to-end support 24/7. I would say that's a key differentiator, but there's others, but I'll just leave it at that for right now.
Okay. How are security services built within? How are security services built within the cloud service, or are they an add-on service?
That's a great question. So it depends on the cloud service provider. I'll just give you one example. So with another public cloud provider, not to be named, for example, they charge additional for IDS and IPS, or intrusion detection services and intrusion protection services. For example, with Concerto, that is actually included as a standard. So again, it varies cloud provider to cloud provider. Some, for example, will charge additional for PCI compliance. So I know that's probably not the answer you want to hear, but again, it's a great question that you need to be asking any cloud provider. what's included, what's not included, what's an additional fee.
All right, and I want to make a final call for questions here. We do have one more in the queue, and if any others come in, obviously we can take those too. So it's asking about data residency issues. How are they handled?
So again, great question. So with data residency, looking at things, first you have to start, I would start stateside. So if you have compliances like ITAR, which is doing business with the DOD, obviously that data has to reside on U.S. soil. Only U.S. citizens can actually access it. It has to be audited, and you have to be able to demonstrate that to the federal government. As you start to look out to Europe and the East, et cetera, you have to look at a cloud service provider, quite frankly, who has that footprint. Germany is a great example. Germany has some very stringent laws about data residing within their country footprint. So the cloud service provider, if you are a multinational company, having a cloud provider that has the footprint to fit your bill for residency is absolutely a great question to be asking. Hope I answered the question.
All right. Well, that does appear to be the last question, so we will begin wrapping up here. For anyone on the line who may have missed the beginning, we have recorded today's event. We'll be sharing that soon. And thank you for everyone who participated in the poll question or who asked their own question during the event today. Very helpful. And with that, we are going to start wrapping up. So Russ, thank you for taking the time to present today.
My pleasure. Thank you.
All right, and I want to remind folks there is a survey after the event just to get your feedback on your experience today. We really appreciate any feedback there as well. With that, we will leave things and conclude the event. Have a great day, everybody.